Hey y'all, welcome to Things That Go Bump in the Night as we continue on with our series of bringing to light the things that happen paranormal from a Christian's perspective. I hope y'all enjoyed the last one that I did when we did our salvo, our opening one, and that was off base to basically a little bit off of the thesis that I did. It was the demonologist, the exorcist, and the role of the church, as we continue to talk about. And so the topic today that I really would like to talk about some things that are happening, is that, the stories about The Conjuring. The youth are so enamored with the supernatural from the demonic realm. Horror movies, horror flicks make up a ton of Hollywood movie, and they do one spin-off after another. And there's a lot of talk about the Annabelle doll. It's gotten really famous. Probably shouldn't got as famous as it has, but it has, and people are really interested in going to see Annabelle. It spawned 3 movies, came out of The Conjuring, and in fact, the director or the writer, inspired by the actual Annabelle that they have in the movies, was inspired by an actual Annabelle doll that was nefarious in some of the things, kind of supernatural stuff that happened. And of course, you got to go all the way back when I'm starting to talk about the genesis of the Annabelle doll and the rage that is going on. The movie is a porcelain doll from the Annabelle doll. It has nothing really to do with the real Annabelle doll, which is the doll's about the size of a typical 3 to 4 year old. It's a Raggedy Ann doll. It was pretty huge. And when we get to the genesis of the story, I want to talk about, you got to go all the way back to who's the one that actually did it. There's a book that's called The Demonologist, and it's about the extraordinary life of Ed and Lorraine Warren. Now, Ed and Lorraine Warren have been doing this for about 50 years. Both of them have passed on. They have the Occult Museum, and that's where everybody can kind of go to see the Annabelle doll. I don't know if it's open or not, but they started a tour where they were going around the nation to kind of like get people exposed to the Annabelle doll. Probably did raise up some money also. But it was there so we could see it, and because there's a lot of interest in it. Now, and this is where things start to happen. Because I always ask everybody, as a Christian, I remember a guy that was very enamored with certain movies that were coming out, and he wanted to go see them. And so I asked the gentleman, I said, hey, why do you want to go see that? Is it something that you want to expose, something you want to talk about to the church? And if it's not that, then I'm asking you, what's drawing you to see that? Is there something that is drawing you to see it? Because we've talked about the paranormal, and as a Christian, we walk in the paranormal every day. We should be able to see it happening, either from the spiritual side, where there's the good things, which with God, with the gifts of the Spirit, and all that stuff, or there's also the demonic side. But either way, we talked about in the last one that our role as a body of Christ is all 3, the demonologist, the exorcist role, the church. But we also need to be apt to teach. A lot of these kids have no concept of what's going on when they get involved with this stuff. So Annabelle was a phenom that's kind of going around, and that's what we want to talk about. What was the genesis to the Annabelle name or the stories? Because The Conjuring was based upon Ed and Lorraine's life and some of the cases in which they had been in part of it. But of course, with everything else, they were technical advisors, but there's a lot of hyperbole that the Hollywood does to get people to come in to see it. And I've said this before, there's something wrong when people are doing and exposing the paranormal, but they're doing it for likes, outright challenging the demon spirits, or the spirits that are at play or at foot where they're at, so they can capture stuff on video and capture things. And like I said, a lot of people that are into that investigation are doing it for the good heart, maybe as a good reason. But anyways, let's go back. So the Annabelle story, got its genesis, came from Ed and Lorraine Warren on one of their cases that they did. In fact, in this book here, The Demonologist, written by Gerald Daniel Bryant, about their life, Ed and Lorraine's life, and that case is in the book. You can get it and you can read it about it. But I'm going to just talk a little bit about it, because Annabelle has been notorious for having a bad reputation of the paranormal surrounding her life. So let's just get into the beginning of it. Ed and Lorraine were in referencing to a priest that was ministering to, I think it was two nurses and one of the nurses' boyfriend. And it was at a house that they were having some phenomenon that was going on, and it was getting kind of out of hand and kind of crazy. And so they went to church. They trusted this guy, and he came and he talked to them as they were dealing with it. But so they brought Ed and Lorraine Warren in, and they did their interview. It's all down there in that book. But anyway, so what was happening was that all of a sudden they walked in. They were set up. So these two nurses came into an apartment in which they were living in. They walked into the apartment. All of a sudden, one of the nurses' mother, I think, bought her this Raggedy Ann doll. It was a big kind of Raggedy Ann doll. The Raggedy Ann doll was there and came into the house. Don't know where they got the doll. I'm not sure. It was just a birthday gift that was giving to one of the nurses. And so as they were in the house, all of a sudden this doll would start to do things that would not be normal, that would try to get somebody's attention. In other words, the doll would be, she would prop it up in one place. You know, people would do with things, and it was a cute doll. They'd set it in a chair and fold its arms or cross its legs. But little things started happening that wasn't adding up. They'd come home and the doll would be in different positions. Its hands would be down to its side, or its legs would be uncrossed, and everything like that. It would end up in a different room. And so it almost make you think, well, what's going on over here? So they actually did try to figure out what was going on, because they didn't know how it was happening. In fact, they thought that maybe somebody was coming into their house while they were gone and was moving the doll. And so they would set up little things that would be markers or indicators if somebody came in the house. They would leave a track. They would set something up maybe on the door that they had there that would fall into the ground, that you couldn't put back up if it was there from the inside. So, and they couldn't understand all of that stuff that was kind of happening like that. So they did an experiment, and she intentionally folded the arms, sat the doll in chair in one position, and when came back, all of a sudden, the doll wasn't in that position. So it was a clear confirmation that something was going on. Now, if you were from a Christian's point of view, I'd be thinking, okay, what's going on here, spirit? You know, that's a big red flag. But anyways, as them being as not spiritually astute or educated in things of religion, so they decided that they would just kind of see what was going on. But then when the doll started moving and it started closing doors behind itself, and then you'd open up and the doll would be sitting there like on its throne in some place. So then all of a sudden they decided that they wanted to find out what was going on. And so here's one of the things that they did. They brought in a medium. So they brought in a medium to find out what was going on. Now, for a lot of people that don't understand it, a medium is supposed to be one that communicates as a channel between the living and the dead. The only problem with that is from a Christian's point of view, in Deuteronomy 18, where explicitly God tells us not to do that. That's called necromancy, because they're just trying to get in there. And to be honest with you, scripturally, when you expire or you pass on to the other side, you get to graduate into your reward into heaven, or you get to pay for your sins and you go to hell. There's no in between with that. But anyway, so this translite medium, or this medium, came in and started telling them, trying to get in touch with why this doll was moving. And all of a sudden the doll played on their sympathies. The doll was like, you know what? I was a little kid. I lived out in the field. I used to play around in this neighborhood, and I was cutting whatever passed away. And I've been trying to get your all's attention because I want to have some place to live and stuff and like that there. And the doll named itself. This is where the genesis of the name of the doll came. It went from being Raggedy Ann to a medium that said, oh yeah, the spirit associated with this is named Annabelle Higgins. Now, she's talking about a ghost or a spirit that's passed away, and we'll talk about ghosts next time. They don't exist. They're spirits, yes, but it's not the type of spirit that you're thinking of a human spirit that is stuck between two planes of existence trying to get out. No, because the scripture's clear where your human spirit goes upon your death. But anyway, so the doll just says he was looking for a host and asked if it could. Annabelle Higgins, this demon, the spirit, said I wanted to know if it could move into the Raggedy Ann doll. It's been trying to get their attention. So they said sure, and from that day forward, the Raggedy Ann doll's name became Annabelle. So that's the name of I think it was Annabelle. And so that spirit then all of a sudden, started garnering favor. They started propping up. It started to move and started to do other things. In fact, around this doll, that the doll would write little notes to them on parchment paper. Some of them were like, help us, help Lou, whatever it was. It really played on the lady's sympathies when all of a sudden that they got there. So now we know where the Annabelle doll or the Annabelle in the movies got its name from. Now, there was a lot of things that happened around this doll that was paranormal. So can a spirit possess a doll? No, the spirits don't possess a doll. What really goes on is the spirits move the dolls to get your attention or moves objects around so that they get your attention, so that you think that you're alive. You can go on YouTube and everybody can find it. And there's some certain places, I think it's in Mexico, where they have these little cone that fall apart. They're made out of cloth, and the person calls the spirits in, and all of a sudden the cone comes straight up, and they start twirling around on their own power, dancing. And then when they're done, they just collapse kind of there. So it's that spirits are trying to garner your attention. The spirits are trying to get your attention. But there's a little more that went on with the Annabelle doll around in the paranormal activity that surrounded the doll. And they finally gave rise to why they called in the demonologist, everything else, because the gentleman that was involved in this situation did not believe that it was a little child that was living in the doll. It was was an affront to it. And in fact, he would have nightmares about the doll. And one time he went to sleep and he had a dream or a vision, and he woke up, and the doll was crawling up its leg with its arm stretched out and trying to choke him. And so, he woke up on that there. And then there were some other things that happen. And I'm going to save that for the next video. And I'm going to follow this video up, and then I'm going to do the next one with some of the paranormal things that surrounded the Annabelle doll. All right, y'all. Until the next one, it'll be out here shortly. Bye.